Have you ever wondered, is there a sci-fi movie out there that deals with important topics like what's the life of one person versus the life of everyone on Earth? Or what kinds of issues might come up if one is in space for perhaps too long, or with a group of people for too long, and other such weighty matters, but then randomly turns into a slasher movie two-thirds of the way through. And also where you'd recognize almost the entire cast. Well, if you're looking for such a movie, I have one for you. Today we're going to talk about the movie Sunshine from 2007. This is the Geek Cabal channel. If you've not been here before, my name's Bobbie, and today we're going to talk about the movie Sunshine. It's made by Danny Boyle in 2007. So, the base premise is relatively straightforward. The sun is dying, and scientists on Earth have created a device, a bomb essentially, that they're going to put into the sun, detonate it, and hopefully reignite the fusion process back to where it was. Because the sun is dimmed, it's not dead, otherwise all life on Earth would be dead. So, the movie focuses on the crew of the Icarus II, because the Icarus I did not succeed, and they only had enough material for two of these bombs. So, if this goes bust, there will not be a third attempt. Now, who all's in this movie? Well, the cast is actually very short. Let's see, we've got 9 people. Now, there are a couple bit people at the literally tail end, like the last 2 minutes of the movie, and there's a few people in the background in a video in the movie, and there's a woman who does the voice of the computer. But there are 9 cast members, and even then, we only see 8 of them through most of the movie. So, our main character, Kappa, is played by Cillian Murphy, who you might recognize from 28 Days Later and Oppenheimer. Both movies I've talked about here on the channel before. 28 Days Later fairly recently. He's in all kinds of other things too. He's in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy as the Scarecrow. He's in Peaky Blinders. He's in, well, we suspect he's in 28 Years Later, coming out later this year, but he's a producer on that. And he's in just all kinds of other things. Then we have Chris Evans as Mace, who you probably recognize best as Steve Rogers, Captain America from the MCU. Also one of the evil X's in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Also going a little bit farther back, Johnny Storm in the first 2 Fantastic Four movies, as well as, spoiler alert, Deadpool and Wolverine. But he's also in other things. Like, I haven't seen Snowpiercer personally, but he's in that. He's in Knives Out. He's in several things. He's, prolific actor. But this is before Captain America came out. So then we have Rose Byrne, plays Cassie. She is probably best known for the Insidious series, if I had to guess. But she is also in the X-Men movies, the ones that take place, the ones that are kind of essentially prequels to the first 3 from Fox, like X-Men First Class, X-Men Apocalypse. I don't remember if she's in Dark Phoenix or not. I think she is, but don't remember for sure. She plays Moira McTaggart in those movies. So then we have Cliff Curtis as Searle. He's in Fear the Walking Dead, at least the first season, part of the second season. Did a video covering all that not too long ago. He's also in the movie Training Day. He is one of the gangsters that's going to shoot Ethan Hawke's character there towards the end of the movie before he realizes that he rescued his niece earlier in the movie. He's in several other things. He's in Virus, I believe. It's a 90s sci-fi movie with Jamie Lee Curtis and I think Donald Sutherland. Then also in, is it Collateral Damage, I think? Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. He's a terrorist or something in that. But he's in a lot of stuff. Michelle Yeoh as Corazon. I don't remember actually saying her name in the movie. She was in Shang-Chi. Also in Star Trek Discovery. She plays the captain at the beginning of the series, but then is also the Empress in the alternate timeline, the one with the Terran Empire. the Mirrorverse. And she's in several other things too. She's in Tomorrow Never Dies, if I remember right, which is a Bond movie I should probably rewatch at some point. Then we have, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Hiroyuki Sanada as Kaneda. He was in The Last Samurai as he's not the gentleman who is the leader. That's Ken Watanabe, but the guy that seemed like he's kind of his second in command. He was the guy who was always training. The other samurai was really hard on Tom Cruise's character until the main guy was like, "Hey, let him see what he's got here." Also in Army of the Dead, he is the owner of the hotel who sends the people back to zombie-infested Las Vegas to retrieve his money, which is really a cover for something else. I think I talked about that movie in a podcast episode, but couldn't find it and I was looking for it earlier. So I might do a video about that movie at some point here in the near future. I'll have to rewatch it. It's on Netflix. And other movies and shows. Is on the Bullet Train, if I remember right, and some other things. Then we have Benedict Wong, who plays Trey, who's probably best known for his depiction of Wong in the Doctor Strange movies. And then some other MCU movies. If they're in one of them, they're in several others. He's also in The Martian as one of the gentlemen that I believe works at NASA. Might be JPL, but I think it's NASA. And he's on the Earth side. Of course, everyone Matt Damon's on Earth, so you know what I mean. But he's, I'm sure he's in other things, but that's what stuck out to me. Then we have, this is the one actor I didn't recognize from anything else. Troy Garrity plays Harvey. And looking through his movieography, I know there's another term for that, and I can't think of what it is. Or maybe there's not. He's in several of the barbershop movies, which I haven't personally watched, so I couldn't tell you who he is in them. But that's the main thing that stuck out to me is, kind of popular. People watch this channel might have seen. And then we have Mark Strong as Pinbacker. He is the villain in the first Kick-Ass movie. He is also in the two Kingsman movies. He's Merlin, if I remember right, kind of their quartermaster and whatnot. Also played Sinestro in the Green Lantern movie, and is the main villain in the first Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie. So yeah, I imagine most of you watching this probably recognize, well, almost all those people. So, as I said, these are the people we're exposed to through most of the movie. There's a few little bit parts here and there, but it's these people primarily. Now, one of them, Mark Strong's character, you might not realize is Mark Strong, and I'll elaborate on that here in a moment. So, I'm going to try to structure the video a little differently than how I normally do it. Just overall, I enjoy the movie. It's probably I'd say it's a 7. A lot of people seem to have an issue with where things take the turn that I mentioned in the intro, where it suddenly becomes a slasher movie. Because it is a pretty radical shift in the tone. Because up to that point, a lot of the movie is about what are these people willing to do to ensure the success of the mission. You've got several heavy scenes where people are forced to make life and death decisions, and some people are for them, some are not. For instance, the captain, Kaneda, ends up having to make a really tough call kind of early on in the movie, and then later on, after another character kind of screwed some things up, then they suspect that he's that he's the one behind some other things that happen. They come to the conclusion that they don't have enough. An incident occurs that destroys their ability to recycle the oxygen, and they're hours away from completing the mission, and they don't have enough oxygen to make it to that point, but they would if there was one fewer people. So they take a vote on it, and it's supposed to be unanimous, and initially they kind of turn to Cillian Murphy's character, and he's like, "You kidding? Like the fate of the planet versus one life? Yeah, kill him." And he's very nonchalant about it. Uh, but see, Cassie is not for it because she's like, I'm not gonna kill him. So then, you have situations like that, or whenever they find the Icarus One, and they have to decide, they only have the bomb on board the Icarus Two, but if they also had the payload of the Icarus One, then they would have two chances, which for something that, if it fails, is the end of humanity, you'd rather have two chances than one chance. So it is the logical choice, but you have to weigh that against, what if it fails? Like, you're endangering the entire mission by trying to attach to the Icarus One, because you don't know what went wrong. They're not answering your radio signals or anything like that. So it's a calculated risk. That's what they choose to undertake. So, like I said, most of the movie is things like that. And like our characters here, like Kappa, I think he's actually the guy that designed the bomb. So he knows full well what it's supposed to do, how it works, and this, that, and the other. He's clearly an indispensable member of the crew. But he's kind of flippant about some things, whereas Chris Evans is very much the complete, absolute hard ass that is, hey, look, folks, this is the fate of humanity here. Like, we need to take this seriously. Then kind of as the movie's going along, like Searle, who's I think supposed to be like the counselor on board the ship, because they have to worry about everyone's mental well-being because it's a long journey and it's the fate of humanity. Because in case I wasn't clear, they have to take the ship into orbit around the sun, very close to the sun, and then detach the payload, which is the bomb, send it into the sun, and then skedaddle. And the way the ship is designed is like there's a giant, like, circular shield that blocks the heat and light from the sun. The bomb is right behind it, and then, like, imagining this is like the curvature of the shield. Then you have the ship is like a long spire back behind it. So it's protected by the shield of the ship. Then it has a smaller shield for once it detaches to begin backing away from the sun, because they have to keep the shield towards the sun the whole time. So the idea is set the timer on the bomb, then set the timer to detach the bomb, and then get out of there and hope it works. And as Kappa points out at one point, the effect should be pretty instantaneous. Now, if you're on Earth, it'll take about 8 minutes to know if it worked or not. Not that they can radio anyone, because they're too close to the sun, and the signal just gets lost in the heat and light and everything. So, so you have these various character conflicts that are brewing, and then it becomes a slasher movie. So, like I said, overall, I'd give it a 6.5 or a 7, and I'll explain a little more about the plot here in a second. But there's some physics problems with it, and no, I'm not going to criticize the bomb part. Like, I don't know, maybe they found dark matter or something. But no, it's a thing that's a problem in a lot of space movies, and it comes from either people not understanding how a particular thing works, or kind of like action movies where everyone knows what you see in the movie isn't how things happen in real life, but we want to be entertained, so it's stylized. Okay, so the big thing is, I'm sure you've probably seen this in the movies, people being exposed to space and freezing very shortly after being exposed to space. That is not what happens. On Earth, or in the atmosphere, I should more accurately say, there is air constantly moving, you're constantly interacting with it, so it bleeds heat, because when it hits you, it's sucking heat out of you. So it's a constant outflow of heat, and that's why our bodies have to generate heat. Unlike, say, like a reptile that sits on a rock and the sun heats it all day. So, in space, however, there is, notably, no air. It is a vacuum. So there's nothing you're making contact with for heat to bleed off of you. So it has to exit via radiation, which is very inefficient and very, very slow. It would take hours, possibly longer, to actually begin to freeze. You will be dead long before that ever happens. You will not live to be frozen if you're actually exposed to space. You will run out of air. In fact, that's probably how you'll die. I did a little reading up on this. You actually probably won't explode because there's just not the pressure inside your system to do that. And your fluids might not instantly boil like some people suspect, because they're probably going to be kept liquid via the fact that they're inside your veins and arteries and everything. You will probably just suffocate or pass out and then suffocate. So, yeah, you will not freeze. And that does happen. There's a point in the movie where, because of an incident, because of them trying to transfer back from the Icarus 1 to the Icarus 2, the airlock explodes, and there's one spacesuit aboard the Icarus 1, and there are 4 people. Then they realize that the door has to be closed, or the airlock has to be opened manually from inside the Icarus 1, so someone's staying behind. So the other 2 are like, well, we'll wrap ourselves up in insulation. Whoever's in the suit will hang on to us, and we'll just shoot over there. Well, the insulation is pointless. Like I said, you don't lose heat that quickly. It's kind of one of them looks like they almost got frostbite. Like, no. And one gets knocked loose, and he's alive whenever he freezes over and then hits something and shatters. And it's like, no. That happens way too fast. The Marvel movies did this. Whenever Yondu sacrificed himself in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Michelle Yeoh was also in that. She's one of the pirates at the end of the movie. Yeah, so there's some science stuff that's a little wonky. Also, to get to the Icarus 1, like I said, it's a big round shield. Icarus 1's the same. So they move the shield from the Icarus 2 over the shield of the Icarus 1 so they can transfer the command module. Well, the problem is the light reflecting off of the dish, because it's a giant mirror essentially, would be insanely destructive to anything that hits it because of how close they are to the sun. Well, the back side of the Icarus 2 will be exposed to the light reflecting off the dish of the Icarus 1, and it's not protected. It should have been burned up. And there's other things like that. And I'm not saying that detracts from enjoyment of the movie or anything. This is just a matter of, it's a sci-fi movie that kind of tries to go with science as much as it can, aside from the bomb. So, if you're trying to be serious, you should get these things right. But, like I said, overall, like the movie, like the cast. It's made by Danny Boyle, who also made 28 Days Later. Probably why Cillian Murphy's in this one, too. So, and he's got several other movies. Good director. But yeah, so that's my take on it. There's no, if you're worried about kids watching it because it is an R-rated movie, it's for a little bit of blood and violence in the last third of the movie, and language. There's no nudity, there's no sex, nothing like that. A 12-year-old could watch this, in my opinion. So, what is the overall plot here? What happens? So, like I said, they're on their way to the sun to deliver a payload to hopefully restart the sun. Not restart it, but reinvigorate it. As they're getting closer, Searle is starting to lose his mind because he's going to the observation room and exposing himself to greater and greater degrees of sunlight to the point he's getting sunburned. And like I said, he is slowly going crazy. Then somewhere in there, they realize they're coming up on when they're going to lose contact with Earth, so they all have to send their messages back. And, well, Kappa takes too long, and so Mace isn't able to record and send his, and Mace is all kind of pissed off at the rest of the movie over that. Then they have a little... then they come across Mercury, which, because they're so close, they can actually see it, because normally it's normally whenever it transits from the sun, I don't think you can see it because of the brightness of the sun compared to the size of Mercury. So they're able to see it, and whenever they're on the back side of Mercury, they detect the signal from the Icarus 1. So they come to the conclusion that they should go and try to get the payload from the Icarus 1 as well. So they go, and there's a miscalculation in the adjustment to their trajectory because they're going to use Mercury to slingshot to gain speed to get closer to the sun. And that is where Trey is the one that screws up. So they have to make an adjustment and they have to go outside to do it, something to do with the adjustment. And so Kappa and Kaneda go out there, and then the ship starts to auto-correct, and if they have a choice, they can either let the ship auto-correct, which will prevent the damage that it's trying to prevent, or they can manually do it and the ship will be damaged. And Kaneda is like, no, you gotta let the thing do its thing, and he realizes he will not be able to make it back behind the heat shield, so he gets incinerated. But Kappa makes it back. Then that's where Harvey becomes the captain because he was the second in command. Then they link up with the Icarus I, and they go on board. Oh, also there was the filtration system. They have a bunch of plants on board. So there's a room where the CO2 is pumped into the air, oxygen is extracted. It's also where a bunch of water is recycled through the plants and everything else. A fire erupts in there, and they have to smother the fire. Whenever they do, it kills everything in there. And whenever they get to the Icarus I, they go on board. The power's out, but the grow rooms are the same construction. Is full of plant life, years of growth, because it's been years since the first mission. I think 7 years, if I remember right. So they quickly figure out that the ship's useless because the computer cores were removed from the liquid cooling and burst into flame, or they're toast, literally toast. So they can't actually turn the ship on and move it. So they can't take the payload, because the only way was going to be to actually turn the ship on, because it's not like they could just put it in front of the other payload. So they figured out that the crew went into the observation room and completely opened it up and incinerated themselves. And so then there's the explosion at the airlock. Everyone comes rushing that's over there, and it's Kappa, Mace, Searle, and Harvey are all over there. And Harvey thinks that he's the most important person because he's the captain, and also this is him panicking. And so he wants to get into the one spacesuit they have. And Mace is like, nope, sorry, Kappa's the only one that can arm the bomb and knows how to use it. Like, he's clearly the priority here. So he suits up, and then Mace and Harvey he's going to try to carry them. Because what they're going to have to do is align the two ships and then pop the airlock, which will blow them out because of the explosive decompression. And as long as the two ships are in line, he should shoot straight over there to it. So, let's see, Searle decides to stay behind because someone has to stay behind. And because they got to manually open up the airlock. And so he opts to stay behind because, like as he put it, he doesn't really have a role at this point. They're too close. They don't need the psych profile guy whenever they're less than 24 hours from completing the mission. They might need the communications guy, which is what Harvey's job is. And then Mace seems to be the computer guy. So they're close enough that his job is becoming less critical. And they're all kind of realizing there might not be a return trip, so Harvey's job is probably completely worthless. But Kappa has to arm the bomb. So they do this. They go over to the other ship. In transit, Harvey, Kappa lets him go, like not intentionally. And he also releases Mace, but he's able to grab a hold of him. But Harvey goes spiraling off and, like I said, freezes, hits something, his arm shatters, and then he goes beyond the protection of the disc and just flames out. Then they all kind of say their goodbyes to Searle, who then he goes into the observation room and tells the thing to open it up to 100%, so it's going to be like totally unfiltered sunlight, so it's going to incinerate him. And so he goes out being smoked. Then they realize that they're running out of oxygen. They don't have enough to complete it because they have, I think it's 19 hours before they complete the mission, which they're all beginning to realize is probably going to be a one-way trip. But they have like 16 hours worth of oxygen. So they decide they're going to kill Trey because they think he sabotaged the airlock. And so Chris Evans gets a weird vibrating knife thing and goes to go do this. but finds Trey dead with his wrist slit open. And he assumes that Trey killed himself out of guilt. Then he blames Kappa for everything. He's like, oh, we're trying to get the other device. And he's like, no, dude, like, that was the smart choice. Probably. The fact it didn't pan out, Kappa couldn't have possibly known that. So, so he kind of attacks Kappa, then the two of them fight for like a minute, but then they both fall down because they're running out of oxygen. So then, Cillian Murphy is going and he's running a check on the device, and the computer's like, I'm worried about you, Kappa, like, you're dying. And he's like, yeah, I know, but, as long as we complete the mission, that's all that matters. And she's like, well, but you won't. Like, there's not enough oxygen for all of you to survive. And he's like, well, if there's only 4 crew members, because he thinks it's just himself, Mace, Cassie, and Corazon. And the computer's like, well, there would be if there's only 4 of you, but there's 5 of you. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Who's the 5th person? Like, I can't identify him. So, if you've been paying attention to my synopsis or anything, you've noticed I haven't mentioned Mark Strong's character up till now. He was the captain of the Icarus I, and somewhere along the way went completely crazy and decided that God had willed it that humanity would die, and that he was destined to be the last man alive at the end of human history, and there'll be that moment where he is alone with God, and then mankind will be no more. He was alive on the Icarus I, and he's the one who came over to the Icarus II, blew up the airlock, and now is running around as a psycho killer, taking people out. So Cillian Murphy finds him in the observation room. The computer can't identify him, and he realizes that, he goes in and he realizes it's Pinbacker. And then he stabs him. Pinbacker stabs Kappa. So Kappa runs for it, and I was reading up on the movie here a little bit, and someone has pointed out that just before this conversation, they said it was going to be 19 hours to finish the mission. But the rest of the movie appears to move in real time, and the movie's not 19 hours long. Like, there's like half an hour left in the movie at this point. So clearly there's a huge chunk of time missing, or Kappa fought Pinbacker for 19 hours in the observation room. Probably unlikely. So this is definitely a technical flaw in the movie, like time didn't line up. Kind of the same problem like when you see the ticking bomb. And if you actually time the speed at which it's ticking, the bomb will blow up like 10 minutes before it's even close in the movie. But in generic terms, not in this movie, I don't think. So he ends up hiding in an airlock, but then he gets stuck in there, and then Pinbacker goes and takes the computer cores out of the liquid cooling system, which Mace finds them and puts them back in, but it is at the cost of his own life. And he tells Kappa, hey, you've got to find some way out of the airlock. In the meanwhile, Pinbacker kills Corazon, and then is now following Cassie. So, Kappa, Mace gets the computers back in, so the power comes back on everything. Mace hides in the spacesuit, blasts the airlock, and goes into the ship, which is now empty. Corazon's body comes flying and smashes into the spacesuit, and Chris Evans is stuck with the computer because it's like a raising and lowering thing, and he got stuck in it and had to die to fix it. So Pinbacker has chased Cassie over to the other section to where the bomb is, and so Kappa goes in there, finds him. I think Pinbacker has attacked Cassie at this point, and then comes after Cillian Murphy again, and then they kind of fight it out. Now the bomb is like a giant cube. Again, I think it's full of dark matter, but it has its own gravity essentially because of how dense it is. So they're fighting near one of the edges, and the two of them go over, but Pinbacker stays up here. As they're falling, they eventually get pulled into the cube, and they're able to stand on it as if the gravity works that way as well. And they're far enough away from Pinbacker that he can't really chase him unless he jumps, and he doesn't. And then Cassie kind of bleeds out and tells Kappa, make this all worth it. So he goes in, and at this point, they're free falling into the sun. Because he had to jump from, had to set everything for the Icarus to separate from the bomb. And so he has 5 minutes once it starts, because it's a countdown to fire the thrusters and fire it into the sun. and he has to go through the ship in the spacesuit, and like he trips once or twice, and like is, you know, yelling and cussing and frustrating because he knows he only has so much time, and he's moving so slow because of the huge spacesuit. And he gets to the door and opens it and has to fire himself across and grabs a hold right as the thrusters fire. Then he sees the Icarus 1 or the Icarus 2 kind of fall behind the ship and eventually gets out of the way of the sun and just explodes. So yeah, so that's the whole deal. Pinbacker gets on board, activates the device, and then hits the button. And there's a moment because of the warping of space-time, because of gravity and everything and how the bomb works. There's a moment where basically half the room is a giant wall of flame, and he's able to go up to it, and it's there, and obviously he's going to die. So there's no way around it because he's literally falling into the sun. And then the bomb works. It goes off, and then the last minutes of the movie are his sister and her kids in Australia, which you see is covered in snow outside of Sydney, and the sun becomes brighter. And actually, there's not haze and everything covering the land. Everything brightens up. So the bomb worked. They saved humanity. So yeah, like I said, overall, I think it's a good movie. Definitely worth checking out. Decent sci-fi movie. I don't have a problem with the turn to the horror movie. Kept it interesting. I don't really know where you'd have gone with the interpersonal conflicts, because ultimately I think it would have just come down to some other obstacles would have arisen and would have forced someone to go with the bomb into the sun, which obviously would have been Cillian Murphy's character because he's the one who knows how to do it. So, would have had the same conclusion, just a different way to get there. So it was an interesting twist. Yeah. Overall, I would recommend checking it out. Post the usual links down below. Wouldn't expect a sequel to this movie. Don't know if it's worth a ton of watches. It's been a while since I watched it. Decided to watch it again the other day. So, yeah, overall, definitely worth a watch. Like I said, decent sci-fi movie. The horror movie part, it's decent. There's some weird kind of effects they go with, where Mark Strong's character is never really in focus. He's always blurred out, kind of like he's taken on like a supernatural quality by being exposed to the sun all this time. And so it's like kind of like looking into the sun, like you can't look directly at him either. You can't really see him. At least I think that's what they were going for. It kind of works. But yeah, you get a clear shot once or twice. Yeah. Overall, I'd say check it out. But that's all I've got on this one. So if you liked what you saw here, like, share, and subscribe, all that fun stuff. Comment down below if you've seen the movie before, think you're going to watch it. You fans of anyone in the movie, which is like all of the main characters. Does this sound like your cup of tea? Would you prefer I go with the format of kind of give the critique of the movie before I go to the drawn out, here's what happens? Should I just avoid that part altogether? Let me know. So I'm always trying to look to see what the best format for this is. Because I do feel like some of these get a little long-winded. I know it's because I explained the movie. So if that's not your cup of tea, let me know. But yeah, and subscribe, of course. That's the name of the game here on YouTube. Sharing, commenting, help us grow the channel is appreciated. But yeah, that's all I've got. So be seeing you folks later.